Hello, everyone, and welcome to Random Encounter 231 or 231. My name is Jono Logan, and I am going to be your host this week, as I am every week. But this week we have an interesting show this week. But first, just let me introduce the panel because we have quite a star-studded cast this week. We have our fearless leader, Mike Salbato.
Hello.
We have our fearless retro host, Mike Sollosi.
Hello, everybody.
And we have Stephen Mattern, who is simply fearless for making his first appearance on a podcast with all three of the podcast hosts.
Well, thank you. Hello.
Yeah, how's everyone doing today?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
I just finished wrapping all of my presents. So up until about 5 minutes before the podcast started, my desk was completely covered in wrapping paper and bows and just shreds of paper. I wrap presents like a small creature trying to like shove nuts under a tree like for the winter. It's just a mess.
I got a COVID booster shot about 24 hours ago, and my body has not handled it well, so I am hanging on by a thread here, but I can last the whole recording at least.
That is extremely appreciated, and I'm glad that you got the booster.
Yeah, I'm glad I got it too, but maybe in the moment I'm not as glad as I will be later in the week, but I'm doing all right.
Yeah. And Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I didn't have any like pack rat wrapping episodes. I just worked. I played 14, and I'm sitting here with you guys and coffee. So, I'm in a good place.
All right, cool. Well, since you brought up 14, I might as well jump right into that. We're going to be talking a little bit of news before I introduce the main segment of the show. Final Fantasy XIV is experiencing some hiccups, some server congestion issues. Endwalker has been what appears to be a massive success, both in terms of its reception and in terms of its ability to shut down the internet. Mike, you have been playing through it. How has that been, like not being able to log in until 2 hours after you try?
Yeah, 1 to 3 hours. It depends. I've been lucky that I can get around it, like over on the weekend, especially I can just log in the morning and just leave the game on. And then during the week though, it's if you want to play later in the evening, you need to prepare a few hours ahead of time. But, and it all depends. It depends on where you live and when you log in. If I log in the morning and play a little before work, there is a queue of 22 people. And if I log in about, now 7, 8 p.m. at night, it'll be anywhere between 2,500 and 4,500 people. So it could take several hours.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the producers have announced a few things they're going to do in the immediate future, including to all players with an active subscription on December 21st, we'll be getting 14 additional free game days. And that's in addition to the previously promised 7 days. All digital sales to third-party sellers for the Starter Edition and Complete Edition will be suspended for the time being. So if you want to play Final Fantasy XIV, you can't. All free trial accounts will be suspended. Expansion packs and upgrades to Collector's Edition will still be sold. And there's a patch going to be coming on the 4th of January, 2022. And there's some other news there, but I know a lot of people on staff have been a bit frustrated by the congestion issues because it's a very popular game on staff.
Yeah, it's almost like the opposite of what happened to Cyberpunk about a year ago. FF14 Endwalker has been so successful and popular, they had to suspend sales because of server overcrowding. But while Cyberpunk last year, they had to suspend sales because the PS4 and other versions of the game were so buggy. I haven't really ever heard of a situation like this. They even freed up one of the developer servers and made it a public server to handle the extra volume of people, which is, a story that you just don't hear. And it's crazy that it's so popular. I mean, it's a great problem to have, I guess, if you're Square Enix, but it's still kind of insane to report on it.
But the interesting thing is, you'll have these long server queues, but usually you would think that it would be linked to bad server performance. But once you actually get into the game, I actually haven't had any connection crashes, interestingly enough.
Yeah, I've had maybe one. So at least it's stable once you're there. Yeah.
What you said, Mike, is really Sollosi, is really interesting because let's take a look at Cyberpunk and the absolute level of theory that the incompetence and the bugs and the way it was handled and the release, it was a disaster. If any other game had been experiencing these issues, I would say that they would be greeted by similar levels of terrible press. But I think Final Fantasy XIV has such goodwill from the community and people who love it and people who play it that they're understanding. They're frustrated, absolutely, but they're not angry about it, which is actually kind of nice and a much more healthy way to approach these kind of issues, I think.
Yeah, I think it's nice to see. I mean, I know there's still some, angry people, but I think enough people, they've been so upfront about like what the issues are and like going into way more detail than I think they even need to just explain like, look, this is why this is happening. This is what we're doing. And like, they've been really good about being transparent about how they're trying to resolve it. So I'm sure that goes a long way to helping people, understand and accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah. In July, there was a big influx of new players. And basically ever since then, they've tried to be they tried to put forward as much communication as possible as they prepared for Endwalker's launch, and try to work with the semiconductor shortage and COVID related stock issues to build new servers and also just try to increase server health. And the post that they put out on the Lodestone also says that they're going to try to have a roadmap available to like have some consistency or like track of new servers and a data center being made. Mm-hmm. I know in the live letter or the FanFest, they said that they wanted to finally get a data center in Australia, but we'll probably have a roadmap for that in late January, and hopefully that can alleviate some of the issues going forward.
Well, you'd know that you were the one who wrote the news article, so. Well, I hope that things get it back on track pretty soon, because I know that a lot of people are really excited to play that game. Another game that we're getting really excited to play, well, Nintendo Indie World was this week, and I mean, directs or Indie Worlds are always causes for celebration. And there were some interesting games announced. River City Girls 2 was announced. Omari was announced for Switch in spring of 2022. But I think the game that everyone really that caught all of our eyes as RPG fans was Sea of Stars, which is announced. It's going to be released holiday 2022, so a year from now. And a lot can happen in a year. Who knows if it'll be released by then or if it'll be delayed. But oh my God, it looks pretty.
Yeah, so this was actually delayed before because I was one of the first people to follow the Kickstarter. I didn't play Messenger, but as soon as I found this on Kickstarter and another friend showed me, I was pretty much on board almost immediately. And the more I see it and the demo that they released a while ago for PC for backers, it was very good. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
I mean, really, this makes me ask the question, hey, Mike, can we cover the Messenger now?
I mean, I'm not sure we can justify that, but there's really no question that we're covering Sea of Stars.
Yeah, it looks so good. A lot of people are comparing it to Chrono Trigger, and for obvious reasons. The battle system looks somewhat similar, takes place on the map. It just looks really, really good. I'll be interested to see how it plays in terms of the story, because I love the Messenger. And there are some actual serious moments in the Messenger, but there are a lot of tongue-in-cheek video game jokes, because the whole central conceit of the game is that it's an 8-bit style game. And I'm going to be curious if that translates over to Sea of Stars, or if they're going to be playing it straight in that world.
I'm not sure, since I did try Messenger since it was on Game Pass at one point, but I did not get very far.
It's a really good Metroidvania. Yeah. I think so anyway. A good Metroidvania with a twist, especially if you like really insanely hard 8-bit platformers, which, Sollosi, I know you enjoy.
Yeah, I enjoy some 8-bit platformers. I mean, I can count the number that I've actually managed to finish. Probably I only need 2 hands. But the Messenger was good and had a very specific idea and a twist that's pretty memorable around the midpoint. And the fact that their sequel is a turn-based RPG makes it very clear that they're invested in the world and are going to be making more games. But I mean, like, can we even guess what their third genre in a presumed third game, what its genre might be? Like, they could make this a 10-game series and not have any game resemble the predecessor, which is kind of exciting. But I don't think the Messenger is within RPG Fan's coverage, but Sea of Stars definitely is.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it.
You talked about in a way that makes me think that these 2 games, maybe world and story, are linked in some way. Are there? Or
they are? Yeah.
It's a prequel. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, they made it very clear in the 2020 Kickstarter that they are set in the same world, and they're going to continue to flesh out the world.
Gotcha. I actually didn't remember that. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing, and I think that'd be an interesting take for them to do. Just like the first one's a action adventure platformer, next one's an RPG, third one's, I don't know, a puzzle game, things like that. Really moving through the genres and exploring the world through various video game genres.
And I think this is the first new trailer that we got in about a year and a half. This is basically them confirming a Switch version and showing a bunch of new footage. I got a lot of people really excited.
For good reason. There's a lot of beautiful, beautiful footage here. And I mean, it's going to, theoretically, it's going to have an amazing soundtrack as well. Like, the game looks like it's going to be something else.
Who was the composer again for the game? I'm actually going to look at the Kickstarter again, because they announced the composer, and I think they composed Chrono Trigger.
Well, Mitsuda is contributing to it because I guess he's really excited about the project, but I don't think he's the main composer.
Okay. I know that they brought on somebody that, composed classic RPGs. I don't remember. Yeah. I didn't remember who or what. So
you're definitely thinking of Mitsuda, who composed about 80% of Chrono Trigger's soundtrack. Mitsuda's a legend.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it looks like it's going to be a good game, and we're hotly anticipating it in 2022. But this is not the only game that we are hotly anticipating in 2022. In fact, RPGFan has published our annual feature, RPGFan's Most Anticipated Games. So this year, it's our 30 most anticipated games of 2022, and it doesn't really require a whole lot of explanation. It's exactly what it says. So we are going to go through the list and talk about which games we're really excited about, what ones we don't really know that much about, but we're still, excited to learn more. But first, before we dive into 2022, I thought we'd take a little bit of a look at our batting average for 2021. We missed Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy XVI, God of War Ragnarok, Gotham Knights, Horizon Forbidden West, Breath of the Wild 2, Open Roads, Potionomics, Rune Factory 5, and She Dreams Elsewhere. Now, we accept full responsibility for the delay of these games. It's all on us.
That's not too bad, actually, out of 30 games.
It's not too bad. You're right. I mean, frankly speaking, I think that even when we were putting together that list, a lot of them were hopefuls, like Breath of the Wild 2, considering it's still a working title. We don't actually know the title of this game. It was hopefully it will be released in 2021. And we hope that it will be released in 2022. And we'll get into that in a minute.
For a second, I thought I was cursed because my two most anticipated games of 2020 both got delayed to 2021. So I did get to finally play Bravely Default 2 and East 9 this year, but I'm a little bit more hopeful that the 3 or 4 games I'm most excited about will indeed come out in 2022.
A lot of the delays last year, not all of them obviously, but there were COVID delays, things like that, issues with working from home versus from the office. Thankfully, a lot of those issues have been ironed out of experience for the last year. Everyone's been working from home. So before we jump into the feature, I just want to say that although we have many, many contributors to this feature, Zach, our features editor, and manager, he put together the feature. He organized it. This is one of the busiest times of year for him, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the holidays. Zach always, spearheads our most anticipated games, our game of the year coverage, all of that stuff. So I really applaud him for putting this together. So why don't we just jump in? Why wait? First game, Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. This is the only one that I actually wrote the description for this year. I love Advance Wars. It was one of my favorite games for the Game Boy Advance. Does anyone else have any experience with it?
I played the first 3, the 2 Game Boy Advance ones and Dual Strike for the DS. I didn't get around to Days of Ruin for the DS, but I really had a good time with those turn-based strategy games. And there's, I don't know how many RPG elements there are, but you do level up cities and have a multitude of characters to choose from. But I'm interested to see how these games hold up. If the multiplayer from Dual Strike is as good as I remember, and also the remixed tunes, because they had a really catchy soundtrack for 20 years ago.
Yeah, it did. I'm super excited about it because I reviewed Wargroove a few years ago, which was kind of a spiritual successor to Advance Wars, because we never thought we'd see it again. And Way Forward is developing this, and Way Forward is very experienced with retro games, so it has some good people behind it. Mike or Steven, have either of you played Advance Wars?
I have not, but I'm really excited to, because I really enjoyed Wargroove, and I have a lot of memories for the Fire Emblem franchise. So I'm curious to know what Intelligent Systems did before that.
Well, the Advanced Wars, it's not even the Advanced War series, it's the War series, and I mean that it's been going back to Famicom Wars.
Yeah, they're usually called Nintendo Wars, and they had several games for the Famicom and Super Famicom before Advanced Wars gave them a global debut.
Yeah, this was the first Wars games that was released here in the West.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really curious to know more about the games, and I'm curious to play more of a game like Wargroove, because Advanced Wars and Wargroove, from what I can tell, Wargroove is not the same style as Fire Emblem. They are very different in some aspects. Yeah,
I think if you enjoyed Wargroove, that you'll enjoy Advanced Wars. I mean, one of the reasons I think I enjoyed Wargroove so much was because of my enjoyment of Advanced Wars.
Yeah.
And in terms of confidence that this will come out next year, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It was delayed just a few months, but I suspect that it will be released next year. I hope.
I think so too. I don't think it's too big of a game that it's going to have to be pushed back any further than that.
Yeah, it looks like it's pretty much done. It looked like it was pretty much done when they delayed it. I think they just wanted to put some fine tuning in there. So fingers crossed. Here, the next one up is one written by you, Mike Sollosi. AI, the Somnium Files, Nirvana Initiative.
I think you have to go up at the end of Nirvana.
Initiative.
They did the peculiar capitalization there so that the A in Nirvana matches with the A in Initiative. So there's another AI in the title.
Yeah, they're doubling down on the artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and they're one of the main characters is named AI Ball or Aiba, which sounds similar to the Japanese word for partner, Aibo. There's a lot of multiple meanings and puns in the in the name here, but it's Kotaro Uchikoshi up to his old tricks. AI the Somnium Files was a adventure game / puzzle game / like QTE action game from 2019, and it's probably tied with Shadowbringers and Devil May Cry 5 for my favorite games of 2019. It's a really, really great story with some unusual gameplay ideas. I'm not going to talk about anything about the main characters because it's really, really easy to trip into spoilers talking about a game that's only a couple years old. But we know that Nirvana Initiative stars Aiba and Mizuki, who were Mizuki is the adopted daughter of Date, the main character of Somnium Files 1, and Aiba was the AI detective computer that was in his false eye. But now Aiba is in sort of like contact lenses and is teaming up with Mizuki. And Mizuki she's an odd character. She seems to be a martial arts genius. She beats up gangsters with a lead pipe a lot in AI the Somnium Files 1. So maybe we'll get some more of that. But we definitely know it's going to be Aiba and Mizuki taking down a serial killer. And it's from the same Spike Chunsoft team that made the first Somnium Files, and that's enough for me to go.
Yeah, it looks good. This is not this game. The first in the series is a game that many people have told me that I really need to play, given my my particular taste in adventure games. So this might be a good reason for me to dip my foot in and see how it is. Has anyone else played any from this series?
I have, and I loved it. It was my first visual novel. Is definitely unique in that. You had to finish the whole flowchart. It's not like some visual novels where you have to start from the very beginning all over again all the time. The first game was very puzzle oriented, but I wonder if the second game is going to be more action oriented. You know, given Mizuki's combat prowess with the pipe, with the lead pipe. But I think it was my favorite game of 2019, the first one, and it's certainly one of my favorite video game scripts in recent memory.
And also, you call it a visual novel. It's mostly a visual novel. Uchikoshi's previous games, the Zero Escape trilogy, were more visual novel-y than AI is. AI blends genre in weird ways because it's a visual novel most of the time, but then you have investigation segments that are definitely a point-and-click adventure, and then you have action segments and Somnium segments, which are just real weird puzzles that are difficult to explain in just a short time on a podcast. But AI Somnium Files was genre bending in a way that his previous visual novels weren't. But the story was absolutely fabulous, and I hope that Nirvana Initiative lives up to it.
Well, let's move on now to a game that I honestly don't know much about because my name isn't Des Miller. Atelier Sophie 2, Alchemist of the Mysterious Dream. Des seems to be our dedicated Atelier reviewer.
Now that Derek Heemsbergen's retired, I think that is true.
Yes.
Yeah, they have reviewed a number of these games in the last few months, and I suspect that if history holds, I will be giving them this game to review in a few months. So, have any of you played an Italia game? Because I have not.
Not for a while. I played Aisha a while ago, and I liked it, but I didn't like the time limits, which I know it's somewhere in the series. A few games after that, they started like easing up on that, which is probably why I need to get back into them, because I don't like the time limited things of delivering things. But otherwise, I like the games and I like the gameplay of the series.
It's been a longer time for me. I played 2 of the Atelier Iris games for the PlayStation 2. Well, the first 2 of them. And I thought the first one was pretty good, and the second one was maybe not quite as good. But I enjoyed how the stakes were lighthearted and less grim than a lot of other contemporary RPGs. But I didn't like it enough to play the, oh geez, I don't know, 15 of them that they've had in the intervening 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But the 2 I played on the PS2 were both good.
And I have no experience whatsoever with this franchise.
So I suspect the person who is most excited about this game coming out next year is probably Des.
It is interesting that this game comes out in February and they just announced it in October. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, I know we're used to like these things being like at least annual at this point anyway, but it was really surprising that they announced that with like so little lead time.
Yeah, it is. So it's coming out pretty darn soon, as a matter of fact. Let's move on to a game that I think that everyone is excited to play, Chocobo GP.
Oh yes,
Grand Prix, I would imagine, and it's a sequel to Chocobo Racing for PlayStation in 1999. It's Mario Kart with Final Fantasy characters, is what it looks like at the moment, and that's extremely exciting.
Definitely curious about this one. I am a relatively new Final Fantasy fan, so I don't know a lot of the older characters and stories outside of what's been referenced in 14. But I'm curious to see all these other characters in a kart racing game. So I'm curious to see what happens.
Who would have ever thought that kart racing is going to be the most versatile platform to just bring in random characters from your series?
right.
Yeah, I mean, they in Yakuza Like a Dragon, they had the Dragon Kart Grand Prix, and they used that to bring back the racer guy from Yakuza 0. So
and Kiwame,
yeah. So it's I mean, maybe other than a fighting game, like a racing game is a great just throw all of our characters into a bin and shake it up and see what happens kind of genre. This reminds me a little bit of the Itadaki Street game for Wii that had a bunch of Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy characters in it. But it looks pretty sweet mechanically. Like I don't have any experience with the old 1999 Chocobo Racing game, but I mean, a kart racer is fun and versatile, and a lot of people love Final Fantasy. And I think I saw Esperterra in there somewhere.
yeah.
So that's a cool choice. I'd be down to try this. I don't, but I think I'll probably read reviews first.
Yeah, I don't like talking about a potential DLC for a game before it comes out, but I have to admit, because of how Nintendo handled Mario Kart DLC and some other stuff, I do like the idea of this coming out, now versus in 1999, because they could conceivably continue adding racers and tracks to the game later on. So that also is pretty exciting. Be curious to see how much, if it's successful. Obviously, I could see them like supporting it and adding a lot to it. So
I mean, it's impossible to tell nowadays, but I think this is a crowd pleaser. I think this is going to get some decent play on YouTube and from various gaming outlets, because it just looks like a joy to play. Hopefully it is. If it's balanced as well as the Mario Kart series, which is challenging because Mario Kart is an exceptionally well balanced series, they could be looking at a bit of a hit. Okay, let's move on to Death Trash. This is a pixel art twin stick old school RPG style game. It takes a lot of the ideas from like the Elder Gods. It's basically just disgusting. It's a disgusting game. Death Trash is a very apt title, but for such a disgusting game, it looks beautiful pixel art.
I'm a sucker for pixel art games, and from what little I've seen of the art style, I like it. But I have no previous knowledge of the game prior to like a month ago. So From what little I've seen, it looks interesting, but I don't know a whole lot about it.
I know Abe was pretty excited about it after he played the demo.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot either. I'm in the same boat. Like, I appreciate the art. I don't know if they've really been talking about it a whole lot since they announced it. Because I think, did it show up last year or did it show up the year before in like some game event? It's just like,
does
one of
time
those,
have meaning?
I mean, it does a little bit, but I can't remember when they first revealed it. I just remember like every time we see it, it's like, that's cool. That's gross. That's cool though.
Yeah. Yep. Sollosi, any thoughts?
I mean, it looks gross, and they very clearly have a specific aesthetic in mind for it. And I think that so far what we know about the game is being carried by that aesthetic. But I'm intrigued. But I don't think I'm gonna pre-order this thing. I already have too many video games to play and podcasts to record.
Yeah, I understand that entirely. Well, moving on. Digimon Survive. I have nothing to say about this game because I do not follow Digimon. Is anyone a Digimon fan?
I don't like being the this game isn't coming out this year person by default, but boy, this one has had some trouble for quite a while now. I would like for it to actually come out, but they have been so quiet about it for years.
2018 it was announced.
Yeah.
I never had any of the Digimon digital pets, but I did play one of the PlayStation Digimon games, and I watched the first, 2.5 or 3 seasons of the anime. I stopped at Tamers, if for the people that would actually know about this. But Digimon Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory were 2 very, very good RPGs of the 2010s. They got rid of a lot of the jank and slowness that breeding, or I should say fusing Digimon. What went into that in the old Digimon games that I messed around with a little bit. But this one looks really pretty, and it has character designs that would fit in with the slightly edgier than Pokemon vibe of Digimon. Because I don't know if you like, a lot of the old Digimon anime deals with some very serious issues that Pokemon would not ever approach with a 10-foot stick. But I'm intrigued by this, but I'm probably more likely to go back and try to finish my old playthrough of Cyber Sleuth than to try this.
It's not really a series I have personally much interest in, but I know some people do.
Yeah, I have a couple friends who are huge Digimon fans. And I've been meaning to pick up, because they keep recommending it to me, I keep meaning to pick up Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory since it goes on sale all the time. But I have not gotten around to that yet, so I can't really say that I'm all that invested in Digimon Survive yet.
Yeah. The next game on the list is Dustborn. And this is a third-person action-adventure game that is about hope, love, friendship, robots, and the power of words. So, as an adventure game fan, I think this thing looks awesome. I am super excited about it. It takes place in a dystopian version of America, and I think it looks. I like the art style a lot. The art style reminds me of some adventure games like Runaways and companies like that. It's not by the same company, but yeah, I think it looks really, really cool.
The vibe of the American Southwest and sort of the open world in an adventure game makes me think of Full Throttle a little bit, even though I know that's not really the same thing. And also Road 96, which is a pretty interesting narrative game that came out earlier this year, in 2021, that is. But I mean, the pixel art that we have in the previews looks gorgeous, and like if this game lives up to its premise, that would be awesome. But I need to see more. I've been a downer this entire episode. I apologize, but
no, you haven't.
But I don't know enough about this game to be that excited. But those images look really great.
Yeah.
It's by the developers that did Dreamfall Chapters. So, and as I recall, that was received pretty well. But I like what they're doing with this. It's a really interesting premise and like gameplay style where you actually fight with words.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept. And as an adventure game fan, I think I'm going to I'll give it a try. Let's move on to a game that I know that everyone is excited about, which is Eiyuden Chronicle Rising. Eiyuden Chronicle Rising.
Just one chronicle.
Just one. There's no multiple chronicles. Not yet. There will be. But at the moment, so this is going to be a prequel to Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, which is going to be a spiritual successor of the Suikoden series. Must be my Nova Scotian blood in me with the pronunciation. Yeah, so it's going to be a prequel story, and it's going to be an action RPG instead of a turn-based game. It looks gorgeous, much like the actually announced one, and it's going to be it's going to have a town building mechanic in it as well. So yeah, this looks just really cool.
This is the similar situation for me, like with Sea of Stars, where I discovered the game proper through Kickstarter, and by proxy, their little prequel game here. Very excited, just like with Sea of Stars. I have not played. What was that series that you mentioned?
Suikoden.
I have not played those, and this Rising game is not obviously like that. But I'm definitely excited for both games for sure.
I have played a couple of the Suikoden games. The ones I
Just
have,
a few.
The ones I have played are excellent. Suikoden 2 is absolutely one of the best PlayStation 1 RPGs. And Yoshitaka Murayama, who has not been with Konami for several years, made his studio and built the crowdfunding campaign specifically to make a game that's the kind of RPG he wants to make. And that has a lot of people excited because Suikoden has a very dedicated cult following. And one thing about Suikoden is that all of them has a castle town that you recruit characters to and build throughout the game. And that looks like that they are bringing that concept into this Rising prequel. And so there's going to be, it's an action RPG, maybe a little bit Metroidvania, maybe a little bit Sakuna of Rice and Ruin, but in between action segments, you are building your town, and that adds a little bit of Suikoden flavor to the formula, which just gets a lot of people very excited. Plus, the game looks gorgeous.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, I'm so happy that they are able to do this. I mean, it's interesting that in the last several years, probably the Kickstarters that have been not the only two success stories, but two of the biggest, especially in like stuff that we cover, are people who left Konami to make the kind of game that Konami won't make anymore, and they've just done so well for themselves.
And a third guy that left Konami to make his own kind of game went straight to Sony instead, and he's doing pretty well for himself.
Oh, who are we talking about here?
Kojima.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Kojima made Death Stranding with Sony's support, not with Kickstarter, but
Packing Simulator.
True. Yeah,
Mailman
exactly.
Pack Simulator.
But we wouldn't have Bloodstained Ritual of the Night without Koji Igarashi leaving Konami and developing his own crowdfunding campaign. And Igarashi was part of the crowdfunding campaign for 100 Heroes for Aiden, and he's and I think he's either designing a character or a segment in it.
Yeah, and I mean that's clearly. I mean, the fact is that's not coming out for a few more years. So the fact that this is coming out is not only hopefully going to provide a game, an excellent game in its own right, but will build some hype for the RPG when it comes out.
Yeah, Aiden Chronicle was originally announced for 2022, but it got delayed 1 year to 2023. And the action prequel Aiden Chronicles Rising, or Aiden Chronicle Rising, is coming out in 2022.
Yes, theoretically.
Theoretically,
many of these games do not have confirmed release dates yet, and they have been eagerly awaited for years. Speaking of another game that is eagerly awaited, Elden Ring. We've been getting more and more Elden Ring footage over the last few months. And people are getting really, really pumped about this. Primarily, well, I mean, not primarily because, but its lore has been developed by one of the masters of a master of lore, shall we say?
That works, yeah.
You could say George R.R. Martin has had a pretty good decade or so in terms of having his works being viewed by mass audiences.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and this game looks like it will continue that. I don't believe he wrote the story. Sollosi, you and I were talking about this. He's not writing the story. He's creating the world and the lore around it.
Yeah, he worked with the From Software team that's made Dark Souls and Bloodborne and other games, and he sort of helped them with world design and lore and who these characters and villains are. But the actual script and the game itself was designed by the From Studio group. Martin's involvement with the story ended several years ago. So people that are concerned about his health or his inability to finish the septology or octilogy, whatever Song of Ice and Fire ends up being, don't need to worry about that for Elden Ring. It looks like this game did get delayed about a month, so it's coming out in February instead of January. and it did have a closed beta a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, that gave us a lot of new footage and new hype for the game. But it looks like it is landing in February.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that it will be coming out in a few months.
Yeah, that's another one too. That it was, I forgot when it was actually first, not even revealed, like just talked about. Because until I think this last summer, we had a logo and we knew who was working on it, and they had shown nothing for years. So it was really exciting, like this last summer, to finally get to see it. And like in the last 6 months, we just keep seeing more and more, and it's actually suddenly coming out.
Let's see here. It was announced at E3 2019. So
Really?
It's been a little while.
It felt like it was longer, but that's
yeah.
I have had many excited texts from Rob Steinman about this game.
Okay.
If only I was a Soulsborne fan. I'm not, because, well, I want to go back and play Demon's Souls since I have a PS5 and I have the game, but I never got around to it. But that's definitely going to be something I play first before I go to Elden Ring, depending on how I feel about Demon's Souls.
I think it's a game I think I'm pretty excited about. I think it's going to be pretty cool. Really excited to hear what our reviewer says about it, and I do not know who that is yet.
I think there might be a Bloodborne style battle royale for who gets the right to review that game, because there's a lot of people on staff very excited about it.
That's a great idea. I'm just going to steal that idea and just pit them against each other to fight it out, and whoever survives will review the game.
Sure.
And whoever loses will have to review whatever Saga game comes out next.
They did announce another Saga game is in the works, but I don't think that's on our previews list.
No, it's not. I would have resigned from the site if it was. No, I wouldn't have.
No, you
Standing on principle about my hatred of that genre, that game. Well, the sister series of Saga, which I do like, Final Fantasy, might actually have a new entry coming out, Final Fantasy XVI. So this was announced last year. Well, I mean, this was on our most anticipated from 2021 list, and that was a tad ambitious of us.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. To be completely honest, I'm not convinced we're going to see this in 2022 either. But hope springs.
I think
the crystals shed their light.
I think it's possible. Like, I'm not saying it's likely, but at the same time, I know that they specifically this time around did not want to announce it too early and have it drag out like 15 did. So I think that's also why we have not seen anything on it in a little while.
I'm at least glad it was announced with a pretty meaty gameplay trailer, with a good bit of cutscenes as well. But they did say last year, November, that there would be more information this year. I'm not sure if there will be, but if there is, maybe we'll get a release window then. I don't think it's going to come out next year, though.
I'd be interested to see what they do with the crystals, because apparently the crystals are going to be playing a part in this. And in recent years, the crystals have kind of shifted over to Bravely Default as that, that storytelling MacGuffin.
Oh, you best believe there are crystals in Final Fantasy XIV, but not in the way you're thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that. I mean, and speaking of 14, I mean, the lead producer on 16 is Naoki Yoshida, aka Yoshi P, aka one of the most beloved creators by their games community. But I think that with F16, Yoshi P is trying to go for a more traditional, fits in with Final Fantasy story framework than FF14. But in terms of the excitement of gameplay and how summons work, are going to be not like 14 at all. Like, but this is Yoshi P leading a team making a big budget console game, which is something I am so excited about. And I'll play. I'll deliberately be contrarian here and say, I think that we are going to get news on this game in the next few months, and they're going to try to announce it for late 2022. I think this game might actually come out in the year we're saying in our preview, and only because I want it to, and maybe I'm trying to speak that into being.
Yeah, rolling for the big money there, Sollosi.
I will say that aside from the story having to do with summons and just the overall settings, one of the things that gets me most excited about the game is that I think he joined rather late on the project, but one of the lead combat designers for Devil May Cry 5 is actually working on this game.
Now you're speaking my language. Devil May Cry 5, best RPG of 2019.
So that makes me very excited to where this combat can go.
Let's rock, baby.
It'll be fascinating to see where they take this after the the Brotherhood, slightly more modern setting with cup noodles from Final Fantasy XV, because this game does not look like it is going to have any modern product placement.
I don't think there is going to be a convertible with bros hitting the open road in FF16. I don't think there will be, but don't hold me to that.
There's going to be no pizza promotion, probably.
I mean,
Nope.
you don't know.
We never know.
What are the odds of Ariana Grande's involvement this time around?
I'm crossing my fingers.
That's obviously a big title from Square Enix coming out next year, hopefully, maybe, potentially. But there are many others, including Forspoken, which is a game that Audra actually just wrote a hands-off preview of. And Audra really liked what she saw. The footage that we've seen is really, really interesting. It takes place both in the modern world and in a fantasy world, with someone from the modern world crossing over into the fantasy world. So I guess we're getting kind of a fish out of water story there. It looks interesting to me, but I got to be honest, it hasn't really grabbed my attention yet.
I'm not a big fan of the genre of story that this is adapting. So basically a protagonist from the modern world going into the fantasy world. That's seen a lot in anime and manga.
Yeah, that's typically called an isekai, and there are so many of them. And you can joke about it. It's like, well, Wizard of Oz is an isekai, and Alice in Wonderland is an isekai. but like in all serious, or Narnia is an isekai, but like those are modern manga isekai are not classic literature, and there is a big problem with too many of them being written. Sorry, I'll step down from the soapbox. Please continue.
Actually, I wanted to ask you a question about that.
Oh, no.
In terms of isekai, it seems like a key element is almost wish fulfillment, like people find themselves in the fantasy world that they've always wanted to. And I feel like that is a bit of a difference between like Narnia or Wizard of Oz, where it's just someone from our world lands in a fantasy world, but it's not like they wished for it. It's not like they dreamed about entering this world. It was a stranger in a strange land, rather than a stranger who books a flight and has always wanted to visit a strange land and then gets there and it's like, oh, this isn't as good as I thought it was going to be.
It's not exactly like a lot of bad isekai is someone that was bullied or a loser in the modern world goes to a fantasy world and they have some mysterious power that allows them to be superhuman in the fantasy world, like something like that, but which makes it a stage removed from Inuyasha or something that's also very isekai-ish. But this is an isekai story, but it's also a big budget video game from Square Enix, and Audra had very positive things to say about it in the preview. My memory of Forspoken was when they set the trademark for it, a lot of people, not really panicked, but a lot of people suspected it might have been the subtitle for Final Fantasy XIV's new expansion.
Oh yeah.
but then we got the Endwalker confirmation like 2 weeks later or something. But so I don't know a lot about Project Athia / Forspoken, but I'll read reviews and watch videos of it and make a decision later. This could be all right, but again, I am not informed enough to have a real opinion, other than I think isekais are bad and people should stop making so many of them.
Even in video games. Yeah.
Yep, in video games, especially in manga, where I think there are way too many, but I don't need them in my video games.
Well, we'll be talking about what we think is a big one in a couple of minutes. Also from Square Enix. If anyone pays attention to internet chatter, you can probably guess what that's going to be. But let's move on to something that is a little bit different. It's Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. I know nothing about this except that I know that it's been in development hell for like 5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Regular vanilla Grand Blue Fantasy is an extremely popular mobile game RPG with some gacha elements. And it is very, very popular. It's one of the most popular games of its kind in Japan. And it had a fighting game made about 2 years ago called Grand Blue Fantasy Versus that was made by Arc System Works, the Guilty Gear and Blaze Blue and Dragon Ball FighterZ people. And so I think that Grand Blue Fantasy's developers have been wanting to expand into other game spaces and genres for a while now. And so this is their big console RPG that's in the world of Grand Blue Fantasy. I'm not a player of the mobile Grand Blue Fantasy, but this looks really, really pretty. And that's about all I can say about it.
Yeah, it actually, it's the first story on RPGFan right now. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. It's a new trailer and a PC version ahead of the 2022 relaunch. or launch. So yeah, it'll be coming out on a variety of consoles apparently next year.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I know that was announced like right after our feature went up.
Yeah.
Grand Blue Fantasy is popular enough that it has a convention every year, and the new trailer and materials were debuted at that convention.
Yeah, I mean that alone tells you a lot. If you don't follow Grand Blue Fantasy, that it has that much of a following.
Yeah, I say I have no experience with this franchise other than my limited knowledge of Versus. Ever since I began to follow Arc System Works, I kind of went back at their library after really enjoying Guilty Gear Strive, and I saw that Grand Blue Fantasy Versus looked really cool, but I basically know nothing about the story, world, or characters. So
It looks really cool, but that's all I can really say about it. It's as you know, you can't. Everyone has a blind spot. Everyone has a series that they, is really, really popular, but you know nothing about, and it has a massive following. And you hear about it and you're like, wow, how did I miss that? And that's kind of how I feel about this.
That's the difference between Random Encounter and Retro Encounter. We one show has never played anything and talks about it, and the other show actually plays the games that they talk about.
Yikes.
Oh, I was worried Sollosi was going to call me out specifically, but it's just the whole show, so I don't feel quite as targeted as I expected to.
That's all right. I entered this episode intending to take down the power structure from the inside.
No, I'm fine with that, and I think that that is a fantastic tagline. So that might just end up as the title of the episode, actually. Games we'll never play. Speaking of games we'll never play, Horizon Forbidden West.
Don't tell Caitlin that.
I know.
Caitlin, if she was lying down, just sat bolt upright. Said
that. I'll definitely play it too. I mean, I'm actually because they got a PlayStation 5 patch. I'm actually playing through the first game right now, and I'm really enjoying it. So I'm ready for the sequel. Not ready in the sense that I've finished the first game yet, but I will definitely be raring to play it when it comes out.
Getting excited for it. Yeah, so it's the sequel of Horizon Zero Dawn, which in Caitlin's blurb was Caitlin's Game of the Year in 2017. And I know that Caitlin is unbelievably excited for this game.
Yeah, I haven't played a lot of Zero Dawn. It's free for PS Plus subscribers if you have a PS5. So I messed around with it, and I just feel happy for Guerrilla Games. They're the developer, right?
Yes,
Guerrilla Games. They're in Central Europe somewhere. I think in Denmark or the Netherlands or something. But they made the Killzone games for I want to say PS3, and those were just the most gray, dreary, post-apocalyptic shooters that you could possibly imagine, even though they were competently made. But then they come out with Horizon Zero Dawn and now Forbidden West, which are just pure color and lushness and exciting gameplay ideas. Like I forget her name, but the main character of
Aloy.
Aloy, that's it. Yeah, Aloy has all kinds of traps and bows and sort of like low tech mixed with high tech in her arsenal. That's really, really fun to execute. And so Horizon Zero Dawn was this really beautiful, exciting open world, and Forbidden West is another one of those huge budget development team that knows exactly what they're doing. Sony's really excited to promote the game. I think that this is going to be probably Caitlin's game of 2022 and maybe many others as well.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure that we're going to get it next year too.
It has a release date for February, but as far as like improvements over the first game that I really want, I think that the non futuristic story, like all the tribal stuff so far that I've played through, hasn't been the best. So I hope it's a little better here. The melee combat in the first game is quite uninspired. And I just hope that the world is more diverse, because from what I've played, the first game only has only a few distinct biomes, and then the DLC biome. In the Frozen Wilds, I think it's called. So I'm looking forward to it very much, and I will definitely make sure to finish the first game before it comes out in February.
I have it on my PlayStation 5, and it's on my list of games that I need to play, which I'm actually making a reasonable dent into. So I might make a pass at this, and at the end of 2021. I only have 12 days left, or no, 11 days left. Never mind.
It's on my similar list, but I am not going to attempt to play it before the calendar changes.
No, you have too many Yakuza games to play before the end of the year.
Only one. Yeah, I have played 7 Yakuza games in about 14 months, and the only one I have left to do is 6. So that I might try to finish that before it switches to January, but we'll see.
That's impressive.
Yeah. It's my most anticipated title for 2022 is whatever Yakuza announces next.
Yeah.
Which we probably won't get till 2023, but you never know with them. But let's move on to a game that it has been long awaited here in the West, which is The Legend of Heroes Trails from Zero. So this is a new, quote unquote, new release in the Trails series. It's been as Alana put it, a noticeable gap for Western fans. It's the first game in the fan titled Crossbell duology, and it's going to be taking place around the same time as the first 2 Cold Steel games. Again, this is a massive blind spot that I have for RPGs, which is I know nothing about these games except for the fact that they are absolutely beloved by many people on the site.
Oh, yes. Caitlin, Scott, Alana, a lot of people on the site really enjoy the Trails series, which you might hear being called Kiseki in Japanese. Kiseki, written one way, means trail or pathway, written another way means miracle. So it's like trails, miracles, and double meaning stuff, whatever. But anyway, Trails from Zero was one of the PSP games that they made, I think, in 2009 or 2010, and then the whole series started out about 15 years ago with a trilogy of PSP games, then the Crossbell duology, which were the last 2 PSP games. Then there was a spin-off and a fighting game and a whole bunch of nonsense. And then they switched to PS3 development and Vita development with Trails of Cold Steel. And so Trails of Cold Steel and Trails in the Sky and Trails from Zero take place in 3 different locations within the same world, and all 3 have overlapping stories. If you've played Trails of Cold Steel 2, the epilogue of that game has a bunch of Trails from Zero characters in it, so if you haven't played those, it was probably a little confusing. But that's just kind of how this series is. Legend of Heroes has been around since the 80s, and Mike, you even brought up a Legend of Heroes, one of their 80s games, Dragon Slayer, in an episode of Rhythm from a couple weeks ago.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, but the Trails sub-series of Legend of Heroes has been going around since, I think, 2004 or 2005, and I think they just announced the 16th game in the series with Kuro no Kiseki 2.
Yep.
So they're in the 16 neighborhood of 16 or 17 with the series. This one is number 4, which again was originally 2010. We're finally getting it in 2023. The game had a fan translation patch that Nipponichi Software America are working with the people that created the patch to cut in on the development time for this. But it's the PlayStation 4 re-release of a 2010 PSP game that takes place around the same time as Trails of Cold Steel 1, which was a 2012 Vita game. It's so confusing.
You need a flowchart.
Yeah, but you need a flowchart or like 3 or like 3 wiki articles or something to properly understand it. But these games are well written and beautiful and beloved, and people are very excited that we're finally getting game number 4 officially, including me, because again I've played games 1 through 3, then 6 and 7. So I'm less than a third of the way through the whole mess, but and I still can talk about it with a lot of enthusiasm because these games are really good. But I'm getting this game day 1. I don't know because it's coming out near the end of the year. Maybe I might have to wait till 2023. But this is a PSP game, very beloved. It's a lot of people that know these games say this is one of the best ones, and that has a lot of people excited. So sorry for ranting a little bit.
No, you're fine. I mean,
totally
plus,
okay.
Plus there's the fact that like this duology has been missing, in English. Like if anyone didn't play the fan translation patch, which I mean, I don't know when that came out, but it was obviously not in 2010. But if you played the Sky games and the Cold Steel games, like this takes place in between, and it's just I know it's been something that people have been wanting for so long because all these characters show up later, and you just have to figure out like, okay, well, I guess some stuff happened before, but no one really knew what it was. So That'll be nice when both of these games are out here.
And if anyone is interested in the Trails series, we do have a So You Want to Get Into the Trails series feature, which I will include a link to in the show notes.
I might have to take a look at that because this is a series that I've always had in the back of my head as something I want to get around to playing, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So,
and it's also not a short one. Like the first Trails in the Sky game is pretty short. It's probably around 30 hours, but just about all of the other ones are 60 plus. So that is a big ask. Just to try and get into these.
That's my problem. Like I would really like to get into them, but I know because of this, because of the lore, because of how much crosses over, like you can't just get into it a little bit. You have to kind of really commit to all of them.
Next up is a game that I think it has a very dedicated fan base, and it has a name that it will definitely change because there's no way in hell this game is going to be called The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild 2.
To be fair, that's what we're calling it. I think in Nintendo's official marketing, they call it right now. They're saying the sequel to The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, which is even less likely to be a real name.
That would be amazing if they put that on the box art.
Knowing our luck, they're going to announce the real name of it in between us recording this and us publishing this.
What's really funny to me is that you know how Nintendo sometimes has their like current and upcoming game graphics on Twitter. They actually put in the Breath of the Wild text the sequel to Breath of the Wild. And everyone was like, "Oh, is that the title?" But it's obviously not going to be the title anyway.
No, it'll probably be. I mean, it'll probably end up being something like Breath of the Skies or Skies of the Wild. Or
I think they probably will either keep Breath or Wild so that they have the connection that they can use for the first game, like the you could call it the Link Between Worlds strategy. But I'm not going to speculate on what they're going to title it. I'm just speculating that this game is going to be amazing because Breath of the Wild was one of the is one of the signature games for the Switch. It's one of the best Zelda games ever made. And I say as someone who generally prefers 2D Zelda to 3D Zelda, it's I think one of the best world maps in the history of video games.
Yeah.
So if the long-awaited sequel to Breath of the Wild ends up being like 80% of the same kind of game and 80% is good, then that game is an A+. So I'm really excited for whatever this ends up being.
I agree with you. The beautiful thing about Breath of the Wild is that it's whatever game you want it to be. Like I had an amazing time playing this game and I played through it and I walked away and I thought, well, that was wonderful. Everyone who had the experience that I had was very lucky. And then Amanda played through it and I walked in on her and she was collecting bugs and she had a massive bug collection and she was extremely excited about the bug collection. And I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, collecting bugs. And I'm like, I don't think I caught a single bug in this game. I just missed like an entire like giant piece. Like she just enjoyed collecting bugs and getting very angry at Beetle for trying to rip her off.
Yeah, there's so much you can do in the first game.
Yeah. And I think there's going to be hopefully just as much to do in the second game, but I'm not overly hopeful that we're going to be doing any of that in 2022. Does anyone think it's going to come out this year?
No.
Yes.
I think it is. Yes.
Okay. So that's 2 for, 2 against.
Yeah.
And we have this on tape. So
they've I don't think they ever committed to a release window until they said this is coming out next year. Like,
oh, did they actually say that?
I'm pretty sure they did. I thought they said this is a 2022 release. So, like at that point, like I'm willing to accept.
Okay.
I think we're gonna have a new trailer with its true name very soon, maybe even less than a month, and it's gonna come out sometime in 2022. That is my official guess.
Or whenever the next direct is. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you know what? It's Nintendo, so for all we know, they might just like shadow drop it in the middle of a direct. Available today for Nintendo Switch.
I think it is pretty astounding that we are getting open world games from Zelda, Kirby, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Pokemon all maybe in the same calendar year.
Yeah,
which is only sensible for one of those 4, the one we're talking about right now. But still, like Nintendo and I guess also Sega, thanks to Sonic, is just diving into post-apocalypse open world, or in Pokemon's case, sort of like primal. What would you call that? Like Sengoku era open world. Yeah. But yeah, really weird coincidence that we're getting a bunch of iconic characters in open worlds the same calendar year.
Mm-hmm. I admit I never thought we'd see an open world Kirby game, but
yeah. And have you seen it? It's a Breath of the Wild, overgrown ruins kind of open world.
It's really cool looking, but strange.
Is it within our coverage though?
Probably not. There's no Metrovania elements.
What about Kirby-vania elements?
Kirby-vania. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of open world games coming out next year that may or may not be in our coverage. Sonic probably is not, but we'll see. Okay, well, I mean, obviously, Breath of the Wild 2 is a popular source of speculation among RPG fans. As a comic book fan, a game that I am super interested in next year is going to be Marvel's Midnight Suns, which is apparently going to be a tactical RPG, and I'm excited about it, but as a comic book fan, and not just like a Marvel movie fan, because I am a huge Marvel movie fan. I'm currently going out of my mind because I can't go see Spider-Man,
which
because,
is good.
It's stupid theaters. Stupid Christmas, not being able to go to the theaters a week before because Amanda's parents are terrified of COVID. And then again, so am I, so that's fine. Yeah. So Marvel Midnight Suns, as a comic book fan, is setting off a couple of, not alarm bells, but Midnight Suns is traditionally it's a magic focused group in the Marvel universe. And it usually deals with a few of the lesser known Marvel characters who are magic focused. But in the art, yes, you are playing as a brand new magic based superhero. But in the art, like walking towards the camera, you have like Iron Man and Wolverine and Cap and Captain Marvel. And I'm like, none of these characters are magic focused. Tony hates magic.
Yeah.
Like with a mad passion, Tony Stark hates magic. There are multiple comics where Tony Stark goes off on epic rants about disliking the world Thor comes from and not understanding it. So the fact that they are including these characters instead of really focusing in on, Blade, Ghost Rider, they're both in here too, which is nice to see. But it's the addition of like some Avengers characters is weird to me. I understand it from a marketing perspective, but from a storytelling perspective, it's just strange.
Everyone's favorite sorcerer, Wolverine.
Yeah, exactly.
I have not read the comic run, which I think is Sons with an O. But as far as gameplay goes, I really enjoy the XCOM franchise.
Yeah.
I know that this is card-based and not necessarily ability-based like XCOM is. But I'm curious. I have a lot of faith in Firaxis for what they can do.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. It looks really interesting. And I am excited to play a Marvel tactical RPG that's been giving this much care and attention. It's gotten pushed from March 2022 to the back half of 2022. So it's getting some extra development time in there. And hopefully the lore makes sense. We'll see, but it looks interesting. And I mean, the only thing that does set me off a little bit is apparently it does have deck building mechanics.
I like a lot of deck builders, but like your Slay the Spires of the world, like mixing that with a tactical RPG and a popular license like Marvel seems like a lot. Like it might be too many cooks in the kitchen kind of situation. But what Steven said is accurate. Like Firaxis's XCOM games were excellent, and Marvel is really making a push into their video games recently. Like I really think that like 6 or 7 years ago, they reached out to a bunch of big studios and basically said, all right, how much money do you need for a good Marvel game? And then some of which turned out great, like Insomniac Spider-Man, some of which turned out less great, like Crystal Dynamics Avengers. But a good studio with a cool idea, throwing deck building and cards into it for some reason might be good, but again, I'm gonna have to wait and see. Nico Minoru's in it, and I love Runaways, so that's something.
Runaways is great.
That's and the Brian K. Vaughan run of Runaways is amazing. And then after he finished, Joss Whedon did a run of 6 issues that was also very, very good. But after that run, you can probably stop reading and then maybe check out the show on Disney Plus.
The last few years, their run has actually been pretty good. I've enjoyed it.
It got better because I was really disappointed after BKV and Whedon left.
Yeah, it lost its way for quite some time, but in the latest series, which unfortunately is currently on hiatus, it's good. Okay. I don't love it. It's not my favorite comic, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, I have not read that far along, but the Brian K. Vaughan run of Runaways is awesome, and Nico's a great character, and so having her in a big budget video game is exciting. But there's a lot of potential red flags here. So I am going to take a wait and see approach to this game, like I am for many, many games this episode. But I think there's some tempered excitement, some cautious optimism.
Okay, well, I'm trying to think of a good segue here. You know what Marvel has a lot of? Teenagers with superpowers. And you know what else has a lot of...
there you go.
Yeah, what has a lot of teenagers with superpowers? The Persona series. And you know what apparently resembles Persona? This new game called Monarch.
Well done.
Yeah, nailed it. Swish.
You reached so hard for that one.
Well, I mean, Persona does have something in common with Buffy the Vampire Slayer in that it's a game about children battling their inner demons by literally battling demons. And this might be a little bit of that same sauce.
Yeah. Again, Persona is one of the series that is a big blind spot for me. Apparently, many of the staff members who were developing this game were working in the early Shin Megami Tensei games. So, yeah, this has gotten a bit of buzz about it, and we don't actually need to wait all that long for it to come out. Apparently, it's coming out on the 22nd of February.
I have seen no press for this at all, interestingly.
Me neither.
Before we were making this feature, I didn't even know this was a game. Or I didn't even know that this was being made. But my experience with Shin Megami Tensei and Persona is very little. I've played about half of Persona 5 Royal and got burnt out. And to be honest, Shin Megami Tensei does not really interest me too much. So, but I'm curious to know what they got here. With a different game.
Yeah. For a while, I thought this was some of the same developers as Caligula Effect, which is a game I did not think was very good, but also had some old Shin Megami Tensei people on it. But I think this is different. This is a different group of former Shin Megami Tensei game developers, also getting published by Furyu, but not the same development team exactly, which is a little encouraging because, again, I didn't think Caligula Effect was that good. But again, I've only heard about this because it was announced somewhat recently, and I saw the. I don't even think I saw a trailer. I think I only saw magazine scans or something of it. But I need to know more before I can get excited about this game. But if it has some writers and developers in common with an era of Shin Megami Tensei I really enjoy, then that's something I could be interested in. I played 2 gigantic Shin Megami Tensei games this year with 5 and the remake of 3 Nocturne, and I've been a huge Persona fan for about a decade. I do not want to tell you how many times I've played the main series Persona games. Trust me on this one. You don't. I have some regrets, but if this game scratches some of that same itch and ends up really well made, then I could be very interested in it. But I need to know more. I feel like I'm saying that for every single game now. So maybe we should transition to something that I know I'll be excited about.
What is that? What's the next? We can skip that. We don't need to talk about this very much. We're fine. We can just move past this Monster Hunter.
Risei?
No, Norco sounds more like your speed.
Monster Hunter Risei, co-starring Risei from Persona 4. Exactly right.
Let's take a look at Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. You know what? Sollosi, take it.
Monster Hunter Rise is the 2021 Switch game that is the 5th generation Monster Hunter game from the portable half of the Monster Hunter development team. Monster Hunter has 2 development teams. That like Team A made 4 and World, Team B made Generations and Rise. And this is the expansion to Rise. It is adding a new difficulty rating, a new setting, probably a bunch of new monsters, probably a redesigned endgame. But it is an expansion pack. So if you're interested in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, you should play Rise first, because I don't think you can even access the Sunbreak content until you beat the story in Rise. But Rise is maybe my favorite Monster Hunter game ever made. I would have to really write a 10,000 word think piece to figure that out. But
we publish it.
Don't tempt me. But
Zach.
But like Rise did a lot of things to smooth out and speed up the Monster Hunter formula, being able to have like proper mounts for the first time and cutting out a lot of the preparation mechanics that you would typically do for a Monster Hunter game. And they add dogs and owls to scout around for you, and wire bugs so you can Spider-Man around the map as much as you want with like specialized silk moves. And Sunbreak is just going to be more Monster Hunter Rise. And also, one thing about Rise, all the new monsters added in the game are specifically based on Japanese yokai, which are Japanese spirits or demons. And Sunbreak, it looks like they're going to be drawing from Western folklore, because the 2 monsters they've shown off so far are a giant vampire dragon and a giant werewolf wyvern. So I think we're going to get a little bit of Castlevania in my Monster Hunter with traditional Western style, like horror monsters in the game, which is weird and cool, and I can't wait.
Yes, I imagine that's very upsetting to you that they are merging together those two games. It's very sad.
I am sure I will find it in my heart to forgive Capcom for this injustice, but I will play the game out of duty anyway.
Yes, I have never played a Monster Hunter game, but Rise is probably the one I would play if I had to choose.
That is probably the right choice, unless you can get like World for free or something on PS Plus, which is a thing, but I adore Monster Hunter Rise, and I recommend it wholeheartedly to anyone that's curious.
It is my favorite of the 3 Monster Hunter games that I've played. I've played Generations Ultimate on Switch. I was going to get it on 3DS like a long time ago, but the controls just seemed really weird to me, and I never got around to playing it on 3DS. I played World and not Iceborne. I do want to play Iceborne at some point. But Rise has just been fantastic. I've put way too much time into that game. When Nintendo sent their Nintendo 2021 Wrapped, there was like your most played game, and like the amount of time you've played in one day. The most played game was Monster Hunter Rise. I don't remember how many hours, but the most game time in one day was 12 hours on Monster Hunter Rise because my friends and I absolutely love it.
Astoundingly, okay, this is going to be half surprising, half not surprising. My most played game of 2021, which I found through the same feature, was Monster Hunter Rise. But my most played game in a single day was the great Ace Attorney Chronicles 2 Resolve, because I played that game for 11 or 12 hours in a single day to finish it in time for a podcast recording.
Yeah, that was a Herculean move, by the way.
It
was a feat.
In any case, I am very excited for Sunbreak. Rise is coming to PC, and I would get it on PC, but unfortunately it doesn't have crossplay, so I'll be gearing up for the Switch version.
I have been getting a lot of excited messages from Dom, who's reviewing the PC version for us, about our Valstrax struggles and our talisman farming, and it's Rise is like people that really love the grindiest parts of World or the most preparation heavy parts of Monster Hunter probably don't like Rise as much as I do. But I think it is like from character creation to closing credits, I think it is my favorite one, even though I have a lower hour count in Rise than in World or in Freedom Unite, the one I started on.
Hey, Mike, have you ever played Monster Hunter?
What's Monster Hunter?
Exactly. Okay, let's move on to...
I have not, but I'm glad that other people are excited about it.
Yeah,
that was not meant to be dismissive. That's more, no, I have not played it.
Have you had any interest or just not got around to it?
I always have interest. I just haven't got around to it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to a somewhat smaller game right now called Norco. I've never heard of this, but actually having looked up some stuff and looked up the thing on Steam, I'm getting a little bit interested. So it is a post-apocalyptic point-and-click adventure game. Looks like a third-person point-and-click adventure game with retro pixel art that takes place in a dystopian South Louisiana. So in the description on the page, Anthony says, "Prepare for swamp punk in 2022," and I totally see that. So it's kind of like cyberpunk, but much more low-tech, swampy kind of thing. It's a really interesting looking game.
Yeah, it's not a setting you see a whole lot, which I appreciate. And it's another indie game here on our list today that has really, really great pixel art.
Yeah, pixel art is, I'm a pixel art fan. I can't help it. Also, it's being published by the same company that just released Kathy Rain Director's Cut, which I reviewed a few weeks ago.
How was that?
I actually missed that.
It was fine. I played Kathy Rain originally years ago when it first came out, and the Director's Cut was, they redid it so it's widescreen, and it's fine. It's not my favorite adventure game I've ever played. It's a bit of a short story, a lot of Twin Peaks influence in it, to the point where there are times where I feel that it's not just an homage, but it's a flat out... it's not plagiarism, but it right up to the line. Still, it's a fun game. I enjoyed it. But the publisher is the developer is completely different for Norco than publisher, but the publisher Raw Fury has released some adventure games the last few years, and some of them are pretty cool.
Rest in peace to the recently departed Anne Rice, who was maybe one of the most brilliant employers of Louisiana as a setting for her works. And to have an adventure game set in modern rural Louisiana, but with steam, I guess, cyberpunk elements, I guess, because they do say cyberpunk in the description, don't they? That's odd and interesting.
I think that might be a marketing decision more than anything. It was probably written back when cyberpunk was supposed to be the next big thing, and everyone was putting cyberpunk. Every second marketing email we got during that period had the word cyberpunk in it.
But all right, so I guess we should be ready for Swamp Punk.
Swamp Punk. Well, let's move on to a sequel of an indie darling. Oxenfree released a few years ago, and people just loved it. It was just a game that it was greeted with almost universal, this is just wonderful. Oxenfree 2, Lost Signals, is coming out next year, and I, again, have never played Oxenfree. It is on my computer right now. I'm looking at the icon in my games folder. Because I've been excited to play it because of this sequel, which just looks fantastic.
It's one of the games that I just completely missed. It was added on Game Pass, but like after I got my Xbox, like a month later, it was leaving. So I never got around to it, but I really want to get around to the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that game generating some positive buzz when it came out, the first Oxenfree, but I never got around to it. I was probably, I don't know, hunting monsters or fusing Personae at the time. But I mean, it's cool that it's getting a sequel. It's cool that a lot of people are excited about it. No complaints here. But I'm more likely to play my copy of Oxenfree that I think I do have but completely forgot about than to jump right into the sequel.
Fenner reviewed it years ago, and he gave it a 90.
Pretty high praise.
Fen does enjoy himself a narrative game, and I trust his judgment.
Yeah, it's a game that it's an indie game, and apparently it's going to be a direct sequel. So, fingers crossed that they get the same level of goodwill that they got from the first game.
Yeah, I mean, not that I'm sure there are people who don't like it, but I think everyone that I know personally that has played the first game has only had good things to say about it.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard anything bad about the game. Maybe some people, it's not some people's cup of tea, but it just seems to be a game that does what it does extremely well.
Right.
Okay, let's move on to what hopefully many people are considering a departure for the Pokemon series, moving it in a new direction, which is Pokemon Legends Arceus. It looks to be an open world Pokemon game, which is kind of a no-brainer when you think about it, but it's not taking place in the modern day. It's taking place in the past, which is kind of creating this retro aesthetic of a world that we know extremely well. And people are getting super excited about this game. And I know that many people on the site are, because it's coming out in just over a month.
When Pokemon Company like Duel announced the Gen 4 remakes and this game, which is it's not taking place in Sinnoh, it's taking place in a different region, but it's very Sinnoh inspired in terms of setting and character design or whatever. This is the game I'm a lot more interested in. Unfortunately, a lot of the footage has not really piqued my interest. The first trailer especially, I noticed a lot of visual hiccups, but this was a while ago, and I hope that they've had a lot of time to fine-tune it. Interested, but it's not going to be a day one for me, though.
I imagine that those visual hiccups would have been worked out. I don't think this is a game they can afford to miss on.
No, I think it's one of those games. I don't know why it seems like historically so common with Nintendo, but I feel like it's one of those games that is going to look better in person. It, for some reason, does not look great in stills. I mean, I agree on the initial footage. Like, it was definitely like the frame rate, like nothing was looking good when they first revealed it. But the concept of the game, the open world, like I've wanted to see them try this with Pokemon for a very, very long time. And, they dipped their toes into it with Sword and Shield with the wild area, and then more so in the expansion. So having a whole game built in that style, if they do it right, I think it'd be a really good thing for the series. And I also think it was smart that they announced that alongside a remake, just to make, just to say like, yes, we're still doing traditional ones too, and not just this. I also, of course, the other thing too, is that no matter how good it does end up looking or running, it's one of those things that, not to bring up the Switch Pro again, but man, like this is an ideal candidate to like be on like more powerful hardware.
Yeah.
I think that would smooth out those things because they're obviously trying something really ambitious with like the scale and the level of detail here.
I feel like Pokemon fans have been clamoring for either an open world Pokemon game or an MMO Pokemon game for at least a decade. And this feels like an answer to those calls, but with something people weren't really expecting, with this, Pokemon game set in the distant past with a very Japanese aesthetic. Again, people are in are in kimonos and traditional Japanese dress from like hundreds of years ago. And with Arceus in the title, does invoke Sinnoh, the location of the Gen 4 games. Arceus is one of the big legendary Pokemon from that generation, which Pokemon fans definitely know, but listeners that might not know, now you do. It's such an interesting confluence of ideas that I hope this ends up being good, but it's also weirdly risky for Pokemon to not be the same game they always are,
right?
And especially since there was parts of Sword and Shield I thought were pretty disappointing. So I am not sure what to think of this game. I know that a bunch of people are really excited, and that's awesome, and I will read a bunch of content about this game, but I am more interested in hunting monsters than catching them in 2022.
Could definitely agree.
To be completely honest, this is the first Pokemon game that I've seen in years that has actually made me go, It seems like a very good jumping on point for people because it does take place in the distant past. Not unlike a certain Ace Attorney Chronicles game that came out earlier this year. That is a perfect jumping on point that takes place in the distant past, the distant Japanese past. And I have all the hope in the world that this is going to be an absolute hit. It's hope, but we'll see what happens. Next up is a pixel art game that is the most Audra game I've seen recently. Read Only Memories Neurodriver. Audra actually wrote the blurb for this, and it is going to be a visual novel with pixel art that is a cyberpunky kind of inclusive story. You were playing a psychic detective, ES-88, and you were investigating a rogue psychic named Golden Butterfly. If you just tuned out when I said that, when I started saying rogue psychic named Golden Butterfly, this isn't the game for you. If your ears perked up, yeah, you should take a look at it.
And we should mention this is a sequel to 2064 Read Only Memories, which this sound like, kick me if this sounds familiar. Rob Fenner reviewed for the site several years ago and really liked it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this looks like a very cool sequel. The premise is amazing. I know that the original Read Only Memories has its fans. I have not played them, but maybe that's a decent candidate for a future Retro Encounter episode. I'll send Audra a message later tonight. But it's a really cool idea. It's a little bit AI the Somnium Files if it takes place in a near future where you jump into people's minds that might be witnesses to a murder or something. But yeah, sure. I'm interested to hear more. I'm sure Audra will review this game after she's reviewed another 45 games in 2022.
I have no previous knowledge of these games, so I'm completely fresh on it. But from what little I've seen, I'm intrigued, but I'm definitely going to wait to see what people think of the game first.
Well, let's move on to a game that is the most Nikki game I've seen on this list, which is Rune Factory 5. Now, when this was announced and certain features were announced, Nikki lost her mind in the RPGFan Slack, and for good reason. This is going to be the first time that same-sex marriage is introduced into this farming and relationship simulator. If you've it's Rune Factory. You know what it is. It's a farming sim.
Well, I mean, people might not know because it's been so long since Rune Factory 4, not counting the re-release.
The re-release just happened, though. Rune Factory 4...
special.
What was the... Yeah. Special, that was it. What was the word they put after it so they could justify selling it again?
Yeah, special.
Special. It's special.
Or Royal, or DX, or Complete. There's a couple random adjectives that we as video game players are used to seeing following a remake.
Yeah. Rune Factory 5 is a puzzle, so it's a farming sim. And Mike, I know you like these.
I've never played one.
Really?
Well, actually, Rune.
Wait a second. Okay, wait a second.
Rune Factory, no, I have not. But
are you going to demand? I'm going to demand you give us your hour count on Stardew Valley right now.
I was about to say.
Oh no,
yeah.
I'm just saying specifically Rune Factory because.
Oh, okay.
The problem with my hour count on Stardew Valley is I would have to check my Steam library for my 3 farms on Steam, and then also my Switch for my 2 farms on Switch.
Mhm.
Oh my.
So yeah,
But
it's
you've never played a farming game before.
just not Rune Factory. It's somewhere around 500 hours, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
But anyway, Rune Factory isn't exactly a farming game. It's a more fantasy tinged sim that's definitely a cousin of Story of Seasons / Harvest Moon. And
Yeah.
but I think a lot of it is like spell crafting and I think there is some hunting and farming, but instead of having the goal of raising a farm and finding love, there's fantasy elements to it. I know Marcos was a huge fan of the Rune Factory games, and I heard about them from him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that's the big thing with Rune Factory versus at the time Harvest Moon or Story of Seasons is that those had the farming and the relationships and town building and all that. And Rune Factory's big twist was that it added combat and monsters and other familiar RPG things to it, which of course is also in Stardew Valley, but Rune Factory was doing it first. So, but Rune Factory was just not around for so long because the whole team disbanded many years ago. So it's neat getting that back, because even though Harvest Moon / Story of Seasons has been going on this whole time, they, as far as I know, never incorporated any of this, the fantasy stuff, the combat. So it's nice to actually finally see one of these games again.
Every single time I've ever tried a farming sim, I've just bounced off it. I've invested upwards of like 5 to 6 hours, and it's just like, nope, not for me. So Rune Factory doesn't have a whole lot of interest, but I know there's a lot of people on the site, Nikki included, who are absolutely overjoyed that it's going to be released, and it should be out in March.
I'm poised to like it actually, because I've been talking about and playing Stardew Valley off and on with one of my friends, and she is very excited for this game. So I think I'm going to keep a close eye on it. Not going to be a day one buy, but I'm very interested from what I've heard.
I mean, it's just not my kind of genre, but I'll tell you what, I'll tell you a game that is in the genre that I just really hits me the right way, and that is Salt and Sacrifice. So this is going to be a sequel to Salt and Sanctuary, which I have been looking for an excuse to play for years, and the fact that this is coming out might be a good excuse to play it. Hilariously enough, I don't know what is up with our list of 30 most anticipated games, but it turns out Fenner also reviewed Salt and Sanctuary. So it seems like if it's a sequel on this list, Fenner reviewed it at some point. So it's kind of like it's basically a 2D adaptation of a Souls-like.
So I recently picked up the trailer for an article, and it was the first time I've heard of the sequel. But the trailer was actually quite good, and it actually showed some multiplayer elements in it. So I have not played the first game, but I do have some interest in it now, now that I know that a sequel is coming. And it has some evolved systems from the first game.
It looks, from what I've seen, it looks like a pretty steady sequel. Like they've taken what worked from the first one, and hopefully they've advanced it.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I actually played the first game. I didn't finish it, but for once I can say, yes, this is actually a sequel to a game I have played, and I did enjoy it.
Is it hard?
I mean, for me, like maybe if you play more Souls games or those kind of things, maybe you feel differently. So I don't know. I mean, I know I died constantly, like so much. I know you're supposed to, but yeah, I found it difficult. But like the setting and the vibe, and it's got a really just cool atmosphere to it. So I did enjoy it a lot.
Souls-likes are not a genre I know terribly well. I have not played Salt and Sanctuary, but although I do remember when it was out, it was getting some pretty good reviews. So and again, this game looks great. I am happy that Salt and Sanctuary fans are getting another one, but I am more likely to go back and try to play the first one than this one. No disrespect, but this game looks dope. I just don't have anything meaningful to say about it. So I will say 6 sentences of nothing instead.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to a game that is making a reappearance on this list. It was on our most anticipated 2021 game, and it's going to be on our 2022. I have an odd feeling it will not be on our 2023. I think it will be released this year, and it is She Dreams Elsewhere. So this is an interesting looking RPG with an art style that kind of looks a little bit like Undertale, but more hand drawn, with some interesting color schemes.
It makes me think of like a rotoscoped animated film, like Waking Life or something.
Okay, yeah.
It is a surreal adventure RPG about dreams and the extent in which they mirror reality. So this has been hotly anticipated for a few years now, and I think that it will. it sounds like it'll be a hit if it comes out and it lives up to the expectations. I hope it does. It looks like it deals with some issues that many people are dealing with nowadays, including anxiety and other issues involving mental health. So, and it's a turn-based combat system. So it looks very fascinating, just in a very interesting graphic style.
Yeah, definitely. I'm hoping it does come out soon because I know we've been looking forward to it for a little while now.
Yeah. Stephen and Mike, Sollosi, do you have any thoughts?
I don't really. Before preparing for this episode, I didn't know this game before, and I don't have any previous experience with, like as far as art style goes, I don't really have any previous experience with Undertale or Deltarune. Other than the first couple hours of Undertale. So I think the art style is fine. I know a lot of people really enjoy this style. I personally don't. So
Totally okay. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about this. Well, let's move on to a title that I don't think anyone has a shortage of things to say about.
Cracks knuckles.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I know. That sigh that Mike just let out was echoing in my mind too. We have Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. So this is, if you're listening to this podcast, I suspect you know what this is. Its inclusion on a list of the 30 most anticipated games of 2022 is not controversial because I think everyone wants to see what happens with this thing, whether or not it's going to be a surprise hit, whether or not it's going to be a train wreck. Like, we don't know yet. But this is like the edgiest version of Forspoken was taking a character from the real world and putting him into a fantasy world, and this is just taking that up a notch, I guess.
So my experience with this game so far is it was announced, and I played and I thought the trailer was okay. I played through a portion of the first demo, and I really appreciate some of the ideas that it brought to the table in terms of using all the different classes and magic system that Final Fantasy has, but in a Souls-like light environment. But I thought that the performance on PlayStation 5 was rather poor. And in my opinion, the performance got even worse in the second demo because they crank up the motion blur so high to the point where I get a little motion sick playing it. So if you can't turn the motion blur off either on the PC version or on consoles, I can't play this game. So
I don't think that, I very much appreciate your analysis of it coming from a performance standpoint. Just coming at from a story, I can't think of another trailer that was greeted with this level of shock and mockery.
It became a meme so quickly after its debut that I felt like it almost took over the discourse about the game, which is, I guess, an interpretation of Final Fantasy I into an edgy action game. And as a lover of Devil May Cry, I welcome all the edginess into my action games. But this is a lot, and I mean, I'm amazed that we've talked about this game for so long already without saying the word chaos 5 times yet.
I will say another thing in regards to this game. I thought it was going to get delayed. I am kind of surprised they haven't delayed it, because it just the party system was a bit wonky too. In the second demo. And in the first demo, your party members didn't really do much. But that's pretty much all I have to say about the gameplay side of it. But yeah, the story, like, so far has been memed so hard.
I know that this goes into studio politics and marketing and things like that, but I think the absolute last thing that Square Enix would ever want is for this game to be delayed. Because if this game is delayed, the number of people online who are going to be screaming that it's being delayed because it is just a trash heap, the game's a mess, it doesn't work, they're going to quietly cancel it and try to forget about it. It's just going to be overwhelming negativity. And as someone who did provide a fair bit of negativity in the reception I had to this game, like, it does not look like it's a game for me. Ignoring the chaos, ignoring the edginess of it all, it just doesn't really look like something that interests me. I hope that it comes out, and I hope it's good, and I hope that people really do enjoy it. Because I don't know, there are some games that are greeted with just such negativity from the internet that I just can't help but hope that maybe the internet's wrong and maybe it will be better than you think.
I mean, I would like it to be like I was on that train too, because it's like I don't know, the setting of it doesn't work for me. Like the environments look neat, the gameplay I think sounds all right, looks good. They drilled the characters and just like look how angry this guy is, like from the first second. And and obviously that was intentional, like this is what we want to show you. And I'm like, I don't know, like to have all that and then the little quote about, like, hey, we want to do something unique and like tell a story about an angry white man. I'm like, is that what we need? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel nothing for the characters, but the rest of the game looks all right. Like maybe it'll be better than we think.
There is no way that this trailer did not make the rounds at Square Enix, and like they had to have noticed the look on people's faces after it was done. Like, this is the game they wanted to release. This is the style they want to release. This was the trailer they wanted to release. There's no way this thing got past any kind of focus testing without Square Enix knowing exactly how it was going to be received.
And
because
that's true.
It's absurd.
Yes. I mean, and you know what? If that's the idea, if they knew the reaction and they're just playing into it, then good for them. That's fine. If they're in on the joke, then I'm okay with it.
I think they are, because I think it was a smart move to put a couple demos out, because if people have a negative opinion about the trailer, but if there's a demo, why not download the demo to see if the trailer kind of sells the game, or maybe the gameplay can be good to kind of offset the weird trailer, you know?
Yeah, but then they screwed up the launch of the demo. Like, it was a train wreck disaster.
The first demo had very interesting non-launch.
It was the worst it was probably the worst reception that a trailer one of them has ever gotten at one of these shows. And then they followed it up immediately by screwing up the drop of the trailer, which was supposed to be helping to calm people down.
The demo?
And that just made them angrier. It was a disaster. So, hopefully it comes out and hopefully it's good.
Well, you guys are talking about this game so much. All three of you are obviously getting it day one. I don't need to, I can just ask you how it is, because you're putting twice as much time into this game than anything else on the list. So
I'm keeping a keen eye on it.
I'll ask you about it later in 2022.
Okay.
Anyway, so let's move on now to a sequel that was a bit of a surprise to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are feeling a little bit trepidatious about it because the last few games in the series have not been that good. Star Ocean: The Divine Force. People, in my mind, when I think of Star Ocean, I think of Star Ocean, the first one for the Super Famicom, which got a fan translation, one of the earliest fan translations, and the sequel for PlayStation. And I really haven't touched the game any of the games since then. But it does have some fans. Does it have any fans here?
I tried playing the Super Famicom original, but it's really, really messy. Like the combat is just awful with how locking on works and stuff. And I think it was Tri-Ace's first game after they split off from the Namco Wolf team. But I played Star Ocean Second Story on PlayStation many, many years ago, and then I played the PSP remakes of Star Ocean 1 and 2 when they were new, and I really liked all of them. So I'm a Star Ocean 1 and 2 fan. Star Ocean 3 is kind of great and then kind of insane, and whether you like it or dislike it really depends on your thoughts on the mid-game twist, which I won't go into. But Star Ocean 1, 2, and 3 are very good, and I really like all three of them. 4 and 5 are huge disappointments. The character designs are whack. Some of the combat and crafting and skill stuff is pretty good, but it does not live up to their predecessors. The main protagonist of Star Ocean 4 is named Edge Maverick, which is the most JRPG ass name I've ever heard. Which we are retreading jokes from 10 years ago when that was new.
That says a lot, given the protagonist's name in Star Ocean 3.
What was the character's name in Star Ocean 3?
Fate, Line God.
Oh yeah, Fate. F-A-Y-T, Fate. Wow, it's been a while. But yeah, and the character designs in Star Ocean 5 are so bad and embarrassing that I think whenever we talk about it on Retro Encounter, it just makes Alana and Steph sad. But both of them are big Star Ocean fans. But this one, I want it to be a return to form. Of course, I want a game I'm interested in to be good, but I don't have a lot of recent precedent to to be excited about here. Again, like is this a big budget tri-ace game that could be really great, or is this going to be as embarrassing as Star Ocean 5 was? I could go either way on it, so I'm looking at this game with a lot of interest as a casual Star Ocean person, but we'll see.
I would really like it to be good because just the concept and the settings of the Star Ocean games always look beautiful, and I would everything you see, like if that actually was backed up by like good characters and like gameplay that, you know, basically not what was in 4 and 5, what I hear, like that would be great. Like this one looks great so far. I like the fact that you can like fly around, like the mobility in the game looks really, really fun to play. So, but that's really all I know right now.
So before the trailer came out, I only knew of Star Ocean, the franchise, by name. So I had no previous knowledge of series quality. I thought the trailer was very good. And then I go back and learn about the other games. And the fact that 4 and 5 were not very good. So I'm looking forward to this game as someone who's completely fresh and new, but I do have some trepidation considering what happened with the last two.
You know, we should mention Star Ocean 5 was something like 8 years ago.
Oh,
like,
my.
It was a long time ago. I'm double checking now. Star Ocean 5. 2016. Okay, so 5 years ago. Longer than not as long as I thought.
So this has been in cryo sleep for quite some time. For
so
Journey
I think,
Between the Stars.
I think Star Ocean 4 was 10 years ago and Star Ocean 5 was 5 years ago. So it's been a minute. And if this is an all new team that's trying to put their mark on Star Ocean or do Star Ocean their way, that's exciting. But I need more before I can get properly excited about this one.
This is something I'm very much looking forward to. Again, I'm completely fresh, not jaded at all. But I don't know. I like the trailer. So
well, let's move on to a game that, despite the fact that they say it's going to be releasing in 2021, I will put money on the table. There is no way that this is coming out in November of 2022.
Yeah, I have been optimistic about several games on this list coming out in 2022. I do not feel that optimism with this game.
No, I know that Bethesda really likes November 11th for release dates, but that's pretty ambitious.
Maybe we should say the word Starfield aloud before we continue.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It's Starfield. So this is Bethesda Game Studios' newest RPG. It has been in development for years now. And finally, they announced it. We've been getting little bits and pieces over the last year and a couple of the gaming shows. They say it's going to be released at the very end of 2022. But to be frank, given the reception they got from Fallout 76 and the general public perception of Bethesda Game Studios as releasing games that aren't finished, and they rely on the fans to finish them with patches, I don't think they can afford to release this until it is extremely done.
So, like, we know barely anything about this game.
Yeah, they still haven't really shown much.
As far as I can tell, it's the Outer Worlds without a sense of humor.
Well, I mean, I think there's only one trailer.
Yeah.
So, and as far as, the reputation and stuff like that, I actually don't think Microsoft is going to let them release this game if it's in the same state as Fallout 76 was on its release.
Yeah, hopefully.
I don't think it'll be in the same state as Fallout 76 was. Also, Fallout 76 was it was kind of their B team. Like it wasn't like the main team. But that being said, like the last big RPG that they released was Fallout 4, and Fallout 4 is still buggy. And I like Fallout 4. Like, I am a fan of Fallout games. I love Fallout games. But I am not optimistic that this is going to be released in 2022. If it is, I will be stunned, and happily so.
I just want them to move on from the Creation Engine.
Yeah, I can't believe they're still using it.
They're still using it here, and they're probably still using it for Elder Scrolls 6, and honestly, they need to move on. They need to go to probably Unreal or some other publicly available engine, because Creation Engine's just it's not built for games like this anymore, I think.
It's not cutting it.
No.
Well, if we get it, I will be very surprised.
Yeah. Also, how did Starfield end up on this list and Outer Worlds 2 did not?
Outer Worlds 2 doesn't have a release date.
I know, but could happen next year.
Still a good question.
I would I'm hoping that Outer Worlds 2 comes out in 2023 because I would like to see these two games go head to head because I'm a fan of the Outer Worlds. I know it did not become a massive hit. It has its fans, and I'm one of them. I really enjoy it. I enjoy the world. I enjoy the fact that the factions are brands rather than
nations or gangs or something. Yeah, basically Outer Worlds is a set of frontier planets have become completely taken over by corporations, and you can go full corporate or full rebel in ways that are really interesting. But my favorite thing about Outer Worlds is that you can, if your intelligence is very low, you can choose dumb options in dialogue that sometimes result. Like I think like you can try to put in a password at one point, and the dumb option is just yell ice cream at it, and that ends up being a successful option.
Yeah.
It has a sense of humor and a wryness to Outer Worlds, and what was the group that did it? It's the Fallout.
Obsidian.
Obsidian. I couldn't remember that word. Obsidian has a sense of humor and a creativity to a lot of their games that that I'm not sure Bethesda always has. Like Bethesda games are always ambitious and huge and buggy, and whether you respect them for the size and ambition or can't play them because it's too buggy really depends on the player. But I mean, Starfield, if the pitch of Starfield is a big Bethesda game, but it's science fiction, then that'll get a lot of people excited. I just have such little faith in their products that I'm not sure. And plus, they're complete liars. I mean, they moved their studio from Bethesda, Maryland, to Rockville, Maryland, decades ago, and they still call themselves Bethesda. They're lying to you.
Yes, and that is the thing that most people should be angry about for Bethesda.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, I just can't be excited for a Bethesda game right now. I can be excited for their other studios that were under ZeniMax, but Bethesda Games Works just not doing it for me recently.
I can be excited for the publisher. The developer has lost a lot. So anyway, let's talk about a developer that is releasing something which everybody wants, and that is the next HD 2D game. This is the last game on our list, actually, and this is Triangle Strategy, which it's not only the next HD 2D game, it's also the next game with an absolutely insane title.
Good on them for just sticking with it.
What's funny about the naming scheme of these things is they always began the demo for Octopath Traveler and now Triangle Strategy with Project. Which I guess would mean working title. They just keep it anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of like an Untitled Goose Game situation where the working title was popular enough that they just sort of made it the main title. Yep. And I don't like calling these HD 2D. If you want to put it in the same family as Octopath, I sort of group Bravely and these two games and For Heroes of Light together under Yoshitaka Amano, who's been the producer for all of them. For a while, people tried to call them the Underlined Title Studio, but I think Bravely Second broke that chain combo, unfortunately. But Octopath and Bravely are these games with these like mechanics and ideas rooted in the early 90s, but with a visual presentation that far exceeds anyone's imagination from that time. And if Octopath was a little bit Saga flavored and Bravely is a little bit Final Fantasy V flavored, this is their adaptation of a tactics ogre game. Because it's with the branching paths, the way that strategy is set up, the isometric view is completely tactics ogre. And this team doing a game like that is really, really exciting for me. This is one of my most anticipated games of the year.
If I can get out of February unscathed, this will be a day one buy. I really enjoyed Octopath Traveler. If you are to make a game for Switch that is using Unreal Engine 4, this is the way to do it. Because you can do the lower quality art style, but have it be pixelated and really high quality in that regard. And you can have these really cool lighting and particle effects combined with that. That really works on Switch, and I like it a lot. And I mentioned a lot of other strategy games on this episode, but I'm a sucker for strategy games, but I still haven't played Final Fantasy Tactics.
It's it's tactics. What can you really say?
Yeah.
When Steven says he hasn't played something, I'm no longer surprised.
Well, it's this
boy.
podcast. What he wouldn't be on this podcast if he
Right.
played things.
That's true.
I have not played a lot. A lot is on my list.
You know, a good way to get through a lot of games, a lot of classic games.
What's that?
Make some appearances on Retro Encounter.
True.
The podcast that actually plays the games we set out to play.
Sounds good. But in any case, I enjoyed Octopath Traveler very much, so I have a lot of faith in this team. I'm very ready for another game from them.
Yeah, definitely.
I am a massive Bravely fan. Octopath Traveler, I liked it in spite of the fact that it reminded me of a Saga game. And I think this looks really, really cool. I mean, it's gorgeous. I don't think it's going to have quite the same visual impact as Octopath. Octopath Traveler looked like I remember Super Nintendo games looking in my like nostalgia rose-colored glasses 10-year-old view, whereas this is it's looking, you know, it's using PlayStation style graphics, and it looks like a sharper version of a PlayStation game. And in my mind, that's just not quite as impressive as what they did with the 16-bit style of graphic.
I mean, look, going back to early PlayStation graphics can be pretty rough a lot of the time.
It can be.
And so this is almost like, what if early PlayStation games looked good is almost my feeling with it.
Yeah, true.
Don't get me wrong. I think it looks gorgeous. Again, it's HD 2D, and I really enjoy what they're doing with this. I mean, I wanted an HD 2D remake of Final Fantasy VI, but we're getting the remasters instead. So,
Yeah.
c'est la vie.
I wonder if that HD 2D Dragon Quest 3 is coming here soonish.
I don't even think they announced a localization for that, did they?
They didn't, but I'm all
I
of
really
those
want
games are
one.
coming here now. I mean, outside of 10, but they're pretty good about bringing them here.
We can talk about Dragon Quest very soon if you like, because I have some thoughts, perhaps unsurprisingly. I don't think the Match 3 game that they announced in that big summer showcase is going to come worldwide, but I would bet that 3 HD 2D remake and 12 do.
Yeah.
Because that's those are the kinds of Dragon Quest games that sell. And I'm 50-50 on the offline version of 10 and the treasure hunting game starring Eric from 11.
But I think that we definitely will get the HD 2D version of 3.
I think so.
You'll think we'll get a localization for it?
Yeah.
I think so.
Like simultaneous release or later?
Probably later, because there was over a year between the Japanese release of 11 and the worldwide release of 11. It was something like July 2017 to September 2018.
Okay.
So I don't think they aim for worldwide simultaneous on those games, because especially since it's like the Dragon Quest is such an important series to the Japanese audience.
Mhm.
But I think that we will get eventual localizations for most of those, although we're talking about games that aren't on the list now.
True. And if we're doing that, we should probably wrap up this episode because we're running a little long, but this was a big, big feature and it's the end of the year. So this was a bit of a special episode of A Random Encounter. Before we wrap up, we're not going to talk about them. I just want a one-word answer from all of you, or 2 words, depending on how long the title is. What is one game in that's supposedly coming out next year that you were excited for that's not an RPG or an adventure game? Steven.
Well, I put this in my show notes, but we never got around to talking about it though. I am very excited for God of War Ragnarok. It's not on this list.
No, it was on last year's list.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
Either way, it's not on this list, but it is an adventure game. So
Okay, God of War Ragnarok. Mike.
You should be more specific.
Yeah.
Fearless Leader.
Oh, no. Sollosi should go first.
Sollosi.
Yeah.
All right. I am interested in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, because I enjoy DC Comics characters and I enjoy several Rocksteady Studios games. And this is a weird team-based anti-hero version of that. And that sounds dope.
Cool. Mike. Fearless Leader. Mike.
Yes. This mic. The mic talking.
Were you furiously background Googling while Steven and I were talking?
No, I was not. Yes, I was a little bit. I'm going to pick something weird, and that will be the second episode of Coffee Talk, because I played that game last year and could not get enough of it. It's
cool.
a cute little visual novel, but just the setting and the vibe is so good, and I'm really happy that they're doing more of it.
Cool. And mine is a game that I'm sure that I will not see in 2022, and that is Silksong.
still clamoring for Silksong.
It will never be released. It's never going to happen.
I don't think it'll be talked about in an indie direct like a lot of other people think. I think it'll be a Nintendo Direct style appearance. When will that be? I have
can see
no
that.
idea.
I think it's time. I think it's coming. I think Silk Song's coming out in 2022, and when they announce it, it will be less than a few weeks before it comes out, because that will deliver maximum impact.
They announced that game way too early.
Well, to be fair, they announced it as a DLC pack. It was supposed to be DLC for Hollow Knight,
Yeah.
and we're talking about this, and we can't because we're out of time. It was supposed to be a DLC for Hollow Knight, and then they made it into its own game. So it's technically speaking probably got, I don't want to say restarted at that point, but they probably, brought it back because they were making it into a full-fledged game. Anyway, so yes, this was a very long episode of Random Encounter. Usually we run about an hour 15 minutes, but it's the end of the year, so yay, special episodes. If you enjoyed this episode, we have lots more past episodes of Random Encounter. But this is not the only podcast we have here at RPG Fan, and surprise, surprise, we have the two hosts here with us. So let's start out with Retro Encounter with Mike Sollosi. Mike, what do we have coming up in the future for Retro Encounter?
Sure. Well, we're doing our own year-end episode about the games of 2021 very soon, which we have done for several years. Then in January, we have one episode about, why can't I think of it? Right. One episode about the best games on the PlayStation 2, and 2 episodes about Skies of Arcadia, the Dreamcast and GameCube classic beloved by many, including Alana Higgs, who will be hosting those episodes. And we have a little bit more planned in early 2022, but for now I'm leaving it there.
Yes, okay. And we also have Rhythm Encounter, which is RPG Fan's music podcast, hosted by fearless leader Mike. And why don't you tell us what's coming up for that?
So our next episode of Rhythm Encounter is going to be a strange episode in which we pair RPG music with drinks thematically. So that's going to be fun. That'll be our first episode of 2022.
Getting the new year started off right.
Exactly.
Cool. And we also have our partner podcast, Phoenix Edge, with Hat and Eric. That is on YouTube, and they talk about RPG news. They've been on a hiatus for quite a little while now, but apparently they're coming back soon, Mike?
It depends on when you ask. They might be, but they're still trying to work out some stuff.
They gave us an update in December that their hiatus will continue, but they are planning a return.
Yes, the holidays are not the best time to plan a return for anything, really. It tends to be a bit hectic. Well, if you'd like to get in contact with us, you can fire us off a message at podcast@rpgfan.com. We'd love to hear from you for if you have any ideas for discussion questions, topics for discussion, anything at all like that, please send it to me. I'd love to share it. If you'd like to send me an email, you can do so at jlogan@rpgfan.com, or you can find me on Twitter at Jono Logan. And the people on this podcast, they also have some web presences. So fearless leader Mike, where can we find you online?
You can find me at rpgfan.com. Or if you want to send me a message, it would be mike@rpgfan.com.
And Sollosi?
If you want to find me on the internet, the best place to do so is probably Twitter. I am at The Real Monsoon most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs other times. I am Monsoon Mike on RPG Fan's Discord. And if you want to email with inquiries about Retro Encounter, you should email retro@rpgfan.com.
Cool. And Steven, where can we find you online?
So you can find me on Twitter at Stephen Mattern 0. And if you're curious about what else I write for other than upcoming music reviews and ongoing news here on RPG Fan, I write reviews at cubed3.com. I actually just put out a review for Endwalker, and I very much enjoyed that. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends. Help us get the word out there, and give us a rating on iTunes or your podcast player of choice. From me, from all of us here, thank you so very much for joining us. I hope that you have a absolutely wonderful holiday season, and whatever you're playing, have fun. Bye.